I never thought my marriage would begin with such a major act of forgiveness, but I accepted it for love. I'm Caroline, 42 years old, and I'm married to Nathan, a seasoned man 7 years older than me and the father of a son named Oliver from his previous marriage. From the moment I met Nathan, I was drawn to his maturity and the care he showed me. He made me feel safe, something I had longed for over many years. Nathan had divorced his ex-wife when Oliver was just 2 years old. During that time, Nathan's mother, Margaret, helped him raise the boy. When we decided to get married, Nathan said it would be best for me to move in with him and his mother, so the whole family could be more connected. "My mom really likes you, Caroline," Nathan once said calmly. "She just needs time to get used to you. With you around, she won't feel so lonely as Oliver grows older." I believed those words. I thought if I tried hard enough, if I loved Oliver as my own, if I respected my mother-in-law as a devoted daughter-in-law, then eventually I would be accepted as part of this family. But things weren't that simple. When I moved into the 2-story house in the suburbs of Boston, everything seemed to go smoothly at first. Margaret was polite, neither overly friendly nor cold. Oliver, who was 10 at the time, seemed shy and not easy to open up to me, but I didn't blame him. I understood I was a stranger and he was used to just having his grandmother and father around. I was willing to wait. I also gave up a lot for this marriage. Before getting married, I was a manager at a large pharmacy, earning enough to live comfortably and independently. But wanting to support the family, I cut my hours down to part-time. "You don't have to work so much," Nathan said. "I make enough to support the family." It sounded reasonable. I thought if I spent more time at home, taking care of everyone, my relationship with Oliver and my mother-in-law would improve. But gradually I realized Margaret's distance didn't change. She remained polite, but there was an invisible wall I couldn't break through. Family dinners often meant me eating alone because she and Oliver had already eaten. When I offered to join Oliver's school events, she just gave a faint smile and said, "You don't need to worry about that, Caroline. Oliver's family has always been just his father and me." No matter how hard I tried, I was still just an outsider in my own home. I used to think my patience could change everything. I kept telling myself that if I just kept trying, if I loved Oliver, if I respected Margaret, then sooner or later I would be seen as part of the family. But slowly, I began to realize that not all efforts bring results. Sometimes certain doors were already closed long ago, and no matter how hard I tried, I was just someone standing outside looking in. The distance Margaret showed me wasn't just coldness, it slowly turned into control. She never directly told me I couldn't do something, but every word, every action, subtly pushed me aside. The first time I truly realized this was on a Sunday morning. Oliver had a piano performance at school and I woke up early to get ready to go with them. I wanted to support him, to show him I was there, that I cared about the important moments in his life. But when I came downstairs, Margaret was already waiting at the door, coat on. "Caroline, you should just rest," she said gently but firmly. "Nathan and I will take Oliver. I don't think it's necessary for you to come." I looked at Nathan, hoping he would speak up, but he just smiled at me like it was completely normal. "I think Mom's right," he said. "It's a family tradition. I don't want to make Oliver feel uncomfortable." I didn't understand. Uncomfortable? I'm Nathan's wife. I live with them, share this life with them. I'm not an outsider. But clearly, in Margaret's eyes, I had never been a real part of this family. Oliver grew up, and when he went off to college, I thought things would change. He would be living away, and maybe the relationship between Margaret and me would become easier. But I was wrong. As soon as Oliver moved out, Margaret almost completely changed. If she had kept a polite distance before, now she dropped any pretense. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. Every evening when I came home after a day at work, I would find her sitting at the dining table, waiting. I had to go into the kitchen and cook dinner for the two of us, while she sat there watching my every move with a critical eye. "Caroline, do you really not know how to cook?" she sighed, tasting the dish I had just made. "This is so bland. Nathan likes strong flavors, don't you know that?" I clenched my fists, trying not to let my emotions take over. Another time, while I was doing laundry, she walked into the laundry room, arms crossed. "You don't know shirts have to be ironed before being hung up? Didn't anyone teach you that?" Each day that passed, the criticism grew heavier. She no longer kept up the polite front. To her I seemed like a thorn in her side, someone who had disrupted the balance of her family. What was worse was that Nathan didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't want to deal with it. When I told Nathan what was going on, he just gave a soft chuckle and said, "Don't overthink it, Mom's been alone since Dad passed, she's just feeling lonely." I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. Was I supposed to keep enduring this just because Margaret felt lonely? In the months that followed, I gradually lost my voice in my own home. I was no longer included in family decisions. Nathan and Margaret discussed everything from finances to future plans without ever asking for my input. And then, one day, I discovered something I couldn't ignore. It was an evening just after I came home from work. Margaret was sitting on the sofa, her face cold. "Starting tomorrow, you should rearrange your work schedule," she said without even looking at me. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your father-in-law and I talked. We need someone to be home more to take care of things. Nathan works hard. Don't you think you should do more to share the load?" I was stunned. But I already reduced my hours, and I still take care of the house. Margaret let out a laugh, but there was no warmth in it. "You may think so, but if you really knew how to manage things, this house would be tidier, meals would be better. Nathan would feel more comfortable." I felt a surge of anger rise in me. This was no longer just about being left out. This was control. This was her trying to push me out of my place little by little, until I became nothing in this house. I looked at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I realized maybe I had made a mistake from the beginning. I thought that if I tried hard enough I'd be accepted, but now I started to wonder, had I ever had a real chance at all? One evening, like so many others, while I was clearing the table after dinner, Margaret received a phone call. I didn't pay much attention until she suddenly shot up from her seat, her eyes shining with unusual excitement. "Really, Oliver? Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. This is the best news I've ever heard." I froze, still holding the dish towel. I could guess what was happening. "Say it again." Margaret's voice trembled with excitement. "Sophia's pregnant? Oh, congratulations, sweetheart." "Congratulations to both of you. I'm so proud of you." I blinked, a strange feeling rising in my chest. Oliver and his wife Sophia were expecting a child. It should have been happy news, but somehow I felt uneasy. And just as I feared, from that moment on, everything in the house changed completely. Margaret turned into a different person. She had already been controlling, but now she had a new energy, a new reason to take over the house entirely. She started planning everything, from decorating the baby's room to organizing all the essentials. Every conversation in the house revolved around the unborn child. At first I tried to join in the joy. I asked Margaret if Sophia had a preferred style for the nursery or if I could help with any of the preparations, but she immediately cut me off. "Carolyn, you don't need to worry about this, this is a family matter." I hesitated. "But I'm part of the family too." Margaret gave a soft laugh, but there was no joy in her eyes. "You don't understand. A baby, it's something sacred that only someone who's been a mother can truly feel." I clenched my fists. I understood exactly what she meant. She was reminding me that I couldn't have children. As if she had just been waiting for that moment, the following days Margaret pushed me even further away. Every morning I was given more and more chores. "Caroline, can you clean out Oliver's old room to make space for the baby?" "Caroline, we're going shopping for the baby this weekend. Bring some cash for easier checkout." "Caroline, could you sew a few things for the baby? Then again, maybe not, you probably don't have experience with that, do you?" Every word, every comment, felt like a knife cutting into me. But what I truly couldn't bear anymore was one afternoon when I walked into the living room and saw Margaret going over a list of expenses. I stood there quietly watching as she scanned the numbers, her brows furrowed. She looked up at me. "Caroline, we need to talk." I sat down across from her. "My grandchild is on the way, and of course I want everything to be perfect for the baby," she said, her tone calm but commanding. "So I think it's time you contributed a bit more." I frowned. "What do you mean by contribute?" Margaret tilted her head. "We need to buy a crib, a stroller, clothes, so many things. I think you could chip in, say, around $10,000. You're working, aren't you?" I was stunned. $10,000? Are you serious? "Of course." I felt a rush of anger rise in my chest. "Mom, I'm not against preparing for the baby, but this is something for Oliver and Sophia. I think they should have the right to choose what they want for their child. Besides, I haven't heard either of them ask for this money." Margaret stared at me, then let out a sigh. Caroline, you're being truly selfish. I thought you'd understand that this is something for the whole family. Or is it because you don't have children, so you just can't grasp the joy of it? That sentence hit me like a punch to the mind. I stood up suddenly, my eyes burning. You have no right to say that. She shrugged. I'm just stating the truth. You have no connection to this baby. You're Nathan's wife, but that doesn't mean you're really part of this family. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to tell her how hard I'd tried to fit into this family, but I realized no words could ever change her mind. The room fell into silence. After a long moment, Margaret smiled smugly. Nathan will be out of town for the next 3 days. I think you should reconsider contributing. I didn't reply. I turned and walked out of the room. But not because I was giving up. I had come to understand something. It didn't matter how hard I tried. It didn't matter how much I loved Oliver. Or what I had done for this family. Margaret would never accept me. And if that was the case, did I have any reason to keep enduring this? I never thought Margaret would go this far. I knew she had never truly seen me as part of the family, but I didn't expect she could dismiss me so bluntly, without a hint of hesitation. That morning, when I had just returned from work, Margaret was already sitting at the dining table, her face calm to the point of being cold. I hadn't even taken off my coat when she spoke. Caroline, I think you should start packing your things. I froze in the middle of the room, heart pounding. What do you mean? She adjusted the napkin in front of her as if discussing something entirely routine. Oliver and Sophia are moving back in. They need a bigger space to raise their child. You've lived here long enough, and I think it's time you find somewhere else. I stared at her, hoping I had misheard. Are you kicking me out of the house? She looked up at me, her eyes steady and unmoved. I'm just saying you're no longer needed here. My chest tightened. This is my and Nathan's house. She let out a light laugh. It's Nathan's house, and I believe he won't have an issue with this decision. A chill ran down my spine. Does Nathan know about this? Margaret leaned back in her chair, a faint smile on her lips. You can ask him yourself. If he really wanted you to stay, he would have said something by now. I reached for my phone, my palms cold. I dialed Nathan's number. 1 ring. 2 rings. No answer. I tried again, this time calling his office. A woman's voice answered, polite but distant. Nathan has taken a 3-day leave. He's not in the office. I gripped the phone tighter, unease sinking deeper. Do you know where he went? I asked, though I knew I wouldn't get the answer I wanted. I'm not sure, ma'am. I hung up, my head spinning. Nathan hadn't mentioned anything about taking time off. Where did he go? Why did he disappear all of a sudden, right now? Thoughts swirled in my mind, and a creeping sense of doubt started to settle in my heart. Margaret watched me, as if savoring every reaction. Looks like you understand the situation now, don't you? She said, placing her hand on the table, her voice quiet but heavy. Nathan doesn't need you anymore, Caroline. This family doesn't need you. You've always just been a temporary guest. I clenched my fists, my nails digging painfully into my palms. You never accepted me, did you? My voice was dry. She gave a small laugh. You're smarter than I thought. I took a deep breath. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. Margaret raised an eyebrow, then stood and walked toward me. If you don't go willingly, I can make things a lot more difficult. Her voice dropped like a warning. Are you sure you want to take it this far? I looked her straight in the eyes, and for the first time in this entire marriage I saw the truth more clearly than ever. I had been fighting for a place in this family, but the reality was, I had never had one. I gripped the handle of my bag. You don't have to do anything. I'll go. She shrugged, as if I had just confirmed what she already knew. Fine. You can pack tonight. I turned and walked upstairs. I couldn't stay another minute. I opened the closet, pulled out what I needed, and folded everything into my suitcase automatically. My mind was blank, but my hands kept moving. I didn't call Nathan again. I didn't need answers from him anymore. I picked up my phone and booked a moving service for the next morning. I was leaving, and I was taking everything that belonged to me. As I rolled my suitcase down the stairs, its wheels echoing against the floor, Margaret was still sitting there, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. I walked straight toward the door, but before I stepped outside, I turned back to her. Enjoy your time with your family, I said, my voice strangely calm. I hope you don't end up regretting it. Margaret said nothing, just crossed her arms and watched me leave. I stepped through the door without looking back. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing I knew for sure. I would never let anyone make me feel small again. I dragged my suitcase out of the house, my steps heavy, though my mind felt oddly blank. The night wind cut sharp against my skin. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing: I couldn't go back. I hailed a cab and let my body sink into the back seat. When the driver asked me where to, I suddenly realized I had nowhere to go. I had no family nearby, and I didn't want to bother anyone right now. Then, almost out of habit, the words slipped from my lips. Timber & Co. bar near the station, please. Timber & Co. was the place Nathan and I used to go whenever we needed to unwind after a long day. I remembered those quiet evenings, the two of us sipping cocktails under soft golden lights. It was a place where I had once felt happy, before everything fell apart. The taxi stopped in front of the bar. I pulled my suitcase out and stood there for a moment, hesitating. Then I walked in. The space inside was just as I remembered. Warm, a bit noisy, and heartbreakingly familiar. I sat at the counter and ordered a lemonade. I didn't want anything strong right now. Before I could take my first sip, a voice spoke up behind me. "Caroline, haven't seen you in ages." I turned and saw Samantha, the waitress I used to chat with often. "Hey, Sam," I nodded, trying to smile but couldn't quite manage it. She tilted her head, curiosity in her eyes. "Everything okay?" I sighed and shook my head. "No. But it doesn't really matter anymore." Samantha stayed quiet for a moment, like she was thinking about something. Then she lowered her voice, almost as if afraid someone might hear. "Have you seen Nathan lately?" I frowned. "Why do you ask?" Samantha bit her lip, her face hesitant. "You don't know, do you?" I set my glass down, a cold feeling creeping down my spine. "Know what?" She glanced around, then leaned in to whisper, "He still comes in here regularly, but not alone." My heart thudded. "What do you mean?" Samantha hesitated, then let out a sigh. "He's been coming in with another woman. A younger girl, blonde, usually wearing a red dress. The two of them, they're pretty close." It felt like someone had just landed a blow right to my chest. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself. "How do you know it's Nathan?" My voice was small but tense. Samantha nodded. "I've served them multiple times, and they're not exactly trying to hide it." I closed my eyes, a dull pain spreading through my body. I had suspected something ever since I couldn't reach him. Ever since Margaret so casually said I no longer mattered to Nathan. But hearing it from someone else still knocked the wind out of me. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes. "Can you do me a favor?" Samantha nodded. "Can you get a photo for me if you see them together again?" Samantha hesitated, then gave a firm nod. "I'll do it." I pressed my lips together, feeling like part of me had just crumbled, but another part was beginning to rise. I'd had enough. Nathan hadn't just abandoned me when I was kicked out. He had betrayed me. I had nothing left to lose. I walked out of the bar with the decision made. I would gather proof. I would end this marriage in a way he'd never see coming. I had prepared myself for today. After leaving Timber & Co., I spent the entire night thinking. I couldn't let it end in silence. I couldn't let Nathan and Margaret believe I'd just disappear like some useless leftover. I had nothing left to lose, and if they thought I'd quietly walk away, they were wrong. The next morning I drove back to the old house, the place I once believed was my home. The car stopped in front of the door. I took a deep breath, stepped out, and rang the bell. Within seconds the door opened, and there stood Margaret. She stared at me in shock but quickly recovered, folding her arms across her chest. "Caroline? I thought you were gone." I gave a faint smile. "You figured I'd disappear and never come back, didn't you?" She squinted. "Why are you here? Isn't this over?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stepped inside before she could react. Oliver and Sophia were sitting on the couch, turning their heads in surprise. Nathan was in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee. His face went pale the moment he saw me. Good. They were all here. I shut the door behind me and stood in the center of the living room, my eyes scanning each of them. "We need to talk." Nathan set his coffee down, his voice stiff. "Caroline, you can't just barge in here like this." I folded my arms, staring straight at him. Oh, you don't want me here? Why not just admit you're scared, not annoyed? Nathan pressed his lips together, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. I turned to Margaret. You kicked me out of this house like I meant nothing, but have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who's really been keeping this house afloat? Margaret frowned. What are you talking about? I gave a cold laugh. You think Nathan's been covering everything all these years? Think again. I'm the one who's been paying the rent on this house for the past 5 years. The room fell into silence. Margaret froze, her eyes wide. Nathan turned away, avoiding his mother's gaze. Oliver and Sophia whispered something to each other, but I didn't care. I wanted every single word to sink in. Starting 5 years ago, when Nathan's income started to drop, who paid the rent? I did. Who covered the electricity, the water, and all the big expenses? Me. I stepped toward the dining table and placed a folder down. My bank statements, showing every payment made in my name. Margaret's hands trembled as she picked them up, her eyes scanning line after line. Her face paled as the truth set in. Maybe you thought I was just a useless wife, someone with no real worth in this family, but you were wrong. I've been the one holding it all together, while Nathan let me do it and never said a word to anyone. I turned to look at Oliver and Sophia. Now that your mother kicked me out, I have no obligation to this house anymore. From now on, the rent is your responsibility. Sophia froze, and Oliver's mouth dropped open. Wait. How much? I crossed my arms and spoke slowly. $5,600 a month. Sophia jumped to her feet. What? I shrugged. Everything comes with a price. I've been paying it for 5 years, now it's someone else's turn. Margaret turned to Nathan, her voice trembling. Nathan, is this true? Nathan avoided her gaze and said nothing. I took a deep breath. And by the way, Nathan cheated on me. Sophia's eyes widened. What? I pulled out my phone, opened a message and placed a photo on the table. Nathan sitting at the bar with a young blonde woman in a red dress. Another photo, both of them leaving the bar, hand in hand. Sophia stammered. He has a mistress? I looked straight at Margaret. So what do you think now? This is the man you've been so determined to protect? Margaret's face turned pale. She was speechless. I glanced around the room, taking in the chaos I had just unleashed. Oliver was whispering to Sophia, while Margaret shakily sat down on the couch. I felt a strange sense of relief. I came here to speak the truth. And now, they would have to face the consequences themselves. I reached for my bag, turned and walked to the door. Before leaving, I paused and looked back at Nathan one last time. Good luck with your new life, and don't forget to pay the bills on time. With that, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. This time, I was truly gone. And I knew I would never return. I walked out of that house for the last time, without looking back. The Boston sky was clear that day, sunlight spilling over the road ahead, and for the first time in years I felt like I was finally walking on my own path, free from anyone's grip. After leaving the house, I met with a lawyer to finalize the divorce. There was nothing left to hold on to. Nathan had betrayed me, not just in our marriage, but in how he let me carry the weight of everything for years. I was no longer the woman standing quietly behind him. I didn't know how Nathan reacted when he received the divorce papers, but just a week later I got a message from him. Caroline, can we talk? I know I messed up. Please give me a chance to make things right. I stared at the message, unmoved. Nathan didn't want to make things right, he just didn't want to face the consequences. And I wasn't the one to clean up his mess anymore. Nathan had to face his own downfall. Not long after, I heard from an old friend that things weren't going well for Nathan anymore. Oliver and Sophia had moved out after realizing they couldn't afford the sky-high rent I had been covering. With no one else to pay the bills, Nathan was forced to manage on his own. But his job was no longer as stable as it once was. And Margaret? She finally had to face a harsh reality. She had no one left. Oliver, her beloved son, couldn't handle her controlling and overbearing nature anymore. After realizing how manipulated he had been for years, he decided to cut ties and moved his family out of Boston to start over. Nathan didn't fare much better. After I left, he tried to hold on to his young mistress, but it seemed she was only interested in what he could offer while I was still footing the bills. Once she realized he was struggling financially, she quietly disappeared from his life, leaving him alone to face the mess he had created. With no one left to lean on, Margaret began to face her isolation. No son, no grandchild, no one left to control. I heard she tried reaching out to Oliver, but he refused. As her health started to decline, she had no choice but to begin considering moving into a nursing home. One afternoon, as I was tidying up my new apartment, a small but cozy and complete place, I received a letter. It was from Oliver. Caroline, I know you might not want to hear from me anymore, and I wouldn't blame you if you tossed this letter aside without reading it. But there's something I need to say. I'm sorry. I grew up hearing what my mother said about you. She made me believe you were an outsider, someone trying to replace my birth mother. But as I got older, I started to realize you never did anything wrong. You tried to love me, you tried to be part of the family, but we never let you. I realized the truth too late. When you left, that's when I finally saw who had really been holding that household together. And when Mom turned her control toward me, I realized I didn't want to live that way anymore. So I left. I needed to break free from that cycle. You may never forgive me, and I understand. But if one day you ever want to talk, I'd really like to see you. Oliver. I read the letter over and over, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Maybe, if things had gone differently, Oliver and I could have been a real family. But the past is the past, and I can't change it. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive, but I did know one thing. I no longer held resentment. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the sunset fall over the city of Boston. A soft breeze drifted through, carrying with it the scent of freedom I had never truly known before. For years, I tried to prove my worth in a family that never really wanted me. I sacrificed my career, endured their cruel words, and tried to build a home with people who didn't want me as part of theirs. But after everything, I came to a simple truth. Some relationships cannot be saved, no matter how hard you try. Nathan betrayed me, not just as a husband, but in trust and respect. Margaret never saw me as a daughter-in-law, only as an intruder in a house she controlled. Oliver, although he realized his mistake too late, allowed himself to be manipulated for too long for me to ever go back to being the stepmother he never accepted. So what had I been fighting for? The answer came clearer than ever. I owed them nothing. I used to think a family was where I'd find love and connection. But sometimes family isn't about blood or marriage. Real family is made up of people who love and respect you without conditions. After leaving that old house, I took time to rebuild my life. I returned to working full-time, something I had given up to fit in with my husband's family. I rented a small but warm apartment where I no longer felt watched or judged. I gave myself time, reading books I loved, trying new recipes without fear of criticism. I began traveling on weekends, discovering places I never had the chance to visit before. I found joy in the small things I had forgotten during the years I spent trying to please others. But most importantly, I found myself again. I was no longer Caroline, the abandoned wife. I was no longer Caroline, the disrespected daughter-in-law. I was Caroline, a strong, independent woman, worthy of happiness. Looking back, I realize my story wasn't unique. So many people are trapped in toxic relationships, whether it's in marriage, family, or work. They try to change themselves to be accepted, only to end up hurt. But here's one truth we all need to remember. We don't have to suffer to prove our worth. Marriage isn't supposed to be one-sided sacrifice. If a relationship makes you feel small, ignored, and like you've lost yourself, then it's no longer love. Financial independence is the key to freedom. If I hadn't had the means to leave, I might have stayed stuck in a loveless marriage simply because I had no other choice. But because I was independent, I could walk away and build a new life. Family isn't just about blood. Margaret and Oliver were family on paper, but they never treated me like one of their own. Meanwhile, I found support in friends and coworkers, people who cared for me without conditions. Letting go isn't failure. I once believed leaving meant I had failed, but no. Leaving a harmful relationship is an act of strength. It doesn't mean I'm weak, it means I know my worth and won't accept being treated unfairly. One afternoon, as I was sitting in my favorite cafe, I received a message from Oliver. "How are you? I really want to see you if you're willing." I looked at the message and thought for a moment. I wasn't angry at him anymore. I didn't expect us to rebuild a close relationship overnight. But maybe I could listen, I replied. I'm doing well, we can meet next week. Then I set my phone down and smiled. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing: I wasn't afraid anymore. I had spent too much time trying to please people who didn't deserve it. Now, I just wanted to live for myself. I am Caroline. And I've found myself again. Caroline's story isn't just a personal journey, it reflects the reality many people face when trapped in toxic relationships, whether with family, in marriage, or in society. It reminds us that no one is obligated to suffer in order to be accepted. Financial independence, self-respect, and the ability to let go of what no longer serves us are the keys to rediscovering who we are. Life is too short to live by someone else's expectations. Choose happiness. Choose yourself. Because no one can love you better than you. What do you think about Caroline's story? Should she forgive Oliver and give him a chance to mend their relationship? Or was walking away and building a new life the right choice? Share your thoughts. Don't forget to follow the channel for more real, emotional stories about family, marriage, and the journey of finding yourself.